time now to meet the final three candidates bidding for the 5 vacant seats on the Legislative Council. The election is Monday, of course. This morning, a former senior financial regulator, Shirley Corlett, retired actuary Rich Furner, and experienced businessman Andy Hardy. Good morning to you all. First of all, thank you for coming in. Again, start with this, Mrs. Corlett. Why are you standing?
Well, having retired from the Financial Services Authority, I found that I was missing the mental stimulation of the work that I used to do, and I would really like to utilise the skills and the experiences that I've gained for the 28 years that I was with the regulator, and I feel that it's a good fit for LegCo. Why
LegCo, Mr. Furner?
It's the role. When I saw the job description, scrutiny screamed at me. This is what I love doing. For the previous 9 years, when I was working for Zurich, I was going all over the world, looking at various operations and figuring out how to improve things, making recommendations for improvement. And I think that the policy review and other investigative committee work is right up my street. Also, reviewing legislation. Not only primary legislation but secondary legislation as well is something that I would thoroughly enjoy.
Scrutiny seems to be the word here. Mr. Hardy, same question.
Yeah, I just think I didn't understand the sort of ramifications when I was younger that politicians had over people's lives. So I think as I've been through business and the experience I've had under my belt, it's the opportunity to get involved and actually have an input in the way that these decisions are made, because sometimes I don't think they're the correct things, and sometimes I think that they don't always see the things that your average person might see. So they were looking for diversity, and I think I come from this from a very different sort of angle, and I think that's what I would bring to the process.
As you see it, what does a member of the Legislative Council do?
I think it's almost like a check. I think that the MHKs are effectively elected by the people to represent the people. So they fundamentally put through the policies and the bills, and then we, if I was lucky enough to be elected into the role, would then take that piece of body of work and effectively make sure it was fit for purpose and the best it possibly could be, so that the Isle of Man benefits from that. So it's a second set of eyes, effectively, a disparate group of people looking at it, adding their influence and making sure that it's perfect for the best it can be, effectively.
I suppose you could say the House of Keys is a disparate group of people as well. How, Mrs. Corlett, do you, as a member of the public, how do you perceive the role?
It's interesting. I think members of the public are actually a little confused over the role of the Legislative Council, and one of the things that I'd like to see is that the role become more open and transparent for members of the public. From the perspective of my personal view, I think it's more acting in the way of a non-executive director supporting the executive directors of the MHKs, and I think that obviously, scrutiny of legislation is a very key element of what they do, and that is part of what I've been doing for the last 10, 15 years. And I would really like the opportunity to do it in this role.
Mr. Furner, has it been too easy to criticise the Legislative Council in recent times?
Yes, it has. I would say that the public is probably most annoyed about the fact that they cannot vote in members of the Legislative Council. And I can understand that frustration, and as a result of that, yes, the public is prone to criticise the process.
You're an actuary, recently retired. You worked for 41 years in the life insurance industry. Your profile tells us, you say you're driven to get to the bottom of financial workings. So are the right areas locally being probed at the moment?
Yes, they are. They are being probed, but I think that they can be probed even further, and that is what I would very much like to do.
And likewise, Mrs. Corlett, you've recently retired from the Financial Services Authority. So how would you transfer that knowledge of legislation to the parliamentary stage? Actually, we're all hearing about, we're good at scrutiny, we're interested in it, but actually what would it be done?
Well, I spent the last 10 years at the authority actually drafting secondary legislation and also drafting instructions for the Attorney General's chambers for primary legislation. So I'm used to looking very carefully at the content of legislation to make sure it achieves the correct objective, and also liaising with members of the public and other stakeholders to ensure that the legislation is in fact what is needed by the Isle of Man.
Mr. Furner, you're not, I think by your own admission, a political animal, so this could be seen as a bit of an odd move.
Yeah, but I like to be stretched. I advise my children to stretch themselves because that's how they improve, that's how they develop personally. And for me, even at my age of 62, coming on 63 on Sunday, I like to be stretched. My mind is very active. I'm young in mind and young in spirit.
Do you need to be a political animal, though, to have a role in Parliament?
You certainly need to become more aware of the political protocols and the behaviours, yes. And that is something that I will quickly learn.
Mr. Hardy, what benefit do you believe you could bring to the Legislative Council and the island? Because obviously you're coming at it from a different perspective, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's a difficult one because if you look at like my background, for example, like when I did the courthouse, that was like a £2 million build. So every aspect of that, I project managed, from the type of kick plates, the intermittent strips, what kind of sound system goes in there. So the level of detail when you come to something like that, and the fact that also I brought it in £800,000 under budget, which was the original thing. So I'm a Yorkshireman. I don't
Could
like
do with you in the health service.
Sorry,
could do with you.
Well,
in the
this
health
is what I'm saying, and I genuinely think the MLC should be a group of different people. There should be actuaries, there should be people from a charity background, there should be people with other influences, because you tend to look at things differently depending on the life experiences you've had. So my background is very much, I've worked for large companies, I've worked all over Europe, I've worked all over England. I've been through building up my own businesses pretty much from nothing. So when you come at it from that viewpoint, you have a different understanding of things, and you tend to sort of view things differently. So I've got finance under my belt, I've got HR, I've got people skills, I talk to people every day of my life because I'm in a very social, interacting job. So the influences that puts on me as a person and the values that I have inherited from those experiences, that's kind of what I will bring to it.
You've got a proud Manx parliamentary connection, haven't you?
Yeah, and my wife's grandfather was Clifford Irving, and he was obviously hugely significant in the development sort of the island. And my grandfather himself, he was chairman of Lincolnshire County Council for many years. So political discourse is something that we take great pride in having an interest. And I think when I read the article and then when they were looking for diversity in people of different backgrounds, I genuinely think that's the correct way to go, because I might look at something completely different to say how Rich and Shirley look at it, simply because of the background that I've had and the experiences I've had.
And I agree completely with what Andy's saying.
Thank you, Rich.
Diversity of perspectives is absolutely essential.
Do you need some political experience, Mrs. Corlett, in the Legislative Council? We just don't want 8 or 9 respectfully outsiders, do we?
No, I think that's right. I think the interesting point about this election, though, is that we have a variety of different candidates bringing different skills. So I think the MHKs have got an interesting challenge ahead of them to select from this group the best ones, the best variety of ones that will be the best for the island.
Are you, Mr. Hardy, an outsider? Because I know at the 11th hour you were sort of desperately scrambling around to get enough names. I think one of the supporters backed out.
I don't think it wasn't desperate. It was literally, it hadn't even been on my radar. I thought MLCs were, like I said on the TV interview, I genuinely thought that's kind of where MHKs went to after. So it was like this, almost like the House of Lords scenario, where you don't really know what they do. But with my understanding of how it is now, I genuinely think it's a really good thing, because you've got this check where you have a group of people like the MHKs who discuss and they put together this proposal, and they then effectively sign that off and say this is what we think is the best it possibly can be. That then goes to the MLCs, which it's a great idea. It goes to a group of different people who look at it with different viewpoints, different backgrounds, and they then assess that body of work that's been presented to them, and then they make it the best that it possibly can be.
Do you know why that supporter did back out at the 11th hour?
Who, Julie?
Julie Edge, yeah.
Yeah, I think basically it was a bit of a misunderstanding on our part, because she basically stated that she was going to support me, but I then had to go back to her on the Thursday, from my understanding. But I kind of, to be honest, I don't really remember that sort of conversation, but definitely stepped in at the last moment, and that was really, really good of her. So, yeah, cheers for bringing that up. Thank you very much.
Well, just part of the importance of what goes on beforehand, of course. I mean, if elected for all of you, Mrs. Corlett, first of all, would this be a full-time job?
Yes, it would. Absolutely.
Mr. Furner?
Yes, it would, for the reasons I gave in the hustings, because any spare time that I have, I will devote to analysing further the island's finances.
And Mr. Hardy?
Yeah, I think literally, just coming back to that point again, because you kind of threw that one at me. So, literally, I read an article, they said that they were looking for diversity. I thought, to be brutally honest, that's where I would fit in. It ignited something in me, and yeah, I came to that late. But all of my life, I've seen opportunities and I've gone for them. Sometimes it works out.
Sometimes it can be an advantage.
Yeah,
later,
exactly. So I got in there and I kind of hustled my way in, and 50% of the MHKs were already fully committed by the time I got there. And I was fortunate enough to get David on board, and Daphne and Claire and some of the others who came on board. So for me, they saw potential in me and the experience that I had, and they proposed me. I then thought, if I could get to the hustings, level playing field, I'll do the best I can. People can get to know me and what I stand for. That's the reason I'm here. If I go further, then I've said the right things. If I don't, then that's fair enough.
And if elected, would it be a full-time job? Could you afford the time?
Again, this comes back to it. I genuinely think that MLC's role is completely different to an MHK's role. You take in a body of work, you can read that in the evening. My life is 24 hours. It's a 24-hour responsibility, but the life that I lead, I work till 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning. Other times I'll do 8 till 5. So for me, I can quite easily sit in the evening, review documents. I can do things during the day. I have more flexibility than, say, someone who's got 9 to 5. So to throw this at me constantly, I think it's not disrespectful, but I think it almost states that I'm coming at this from a different place.
Has that been thrown at you?
Yeah, countless times. Paul Maltland just kept hammering it home. What are you going to do? How many hours? Can you put 2 hours, 3 hours? Nobody else gets asked these questions.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, can you effectively be a part-time member, Mrs. Corlett?
Having not done the role, it's difficult to say. I mean, I do have a part-time role at the moment, which I have said that if I do get elected, I would reconsider to see if it is possible for that to continue. It may not be, but clearly the priority, if you're putting your name forward for this role, the priority that you have to give is to that role.
Just let me ask you, we are running out of time fast, to all of you, how important is the salary?
It's not important to me.
I think it's important because it makes it gives you value to what you do, and I think that encourages you to do an excellent job. But it's not high up there. For me, it always has been the roles that I've undertaken. The pay has always been almost secondary to the role and the ability to work for the good of the island or for the good of other people. I mean, that is a key priority for me.
And Mr. Hardy?
Yeah, exactly the same. I'm the same as Shirley on this. This is a huge responsibility. You've got the opportunity to shape things for the island. I genuinely think where we are at this minute in time, you've got massive opportunities coming. I don't see Brexit as a negative. I think the island is perfectly placed to take advantage of things. So you have a scenario where you're putting together a group of people with various skill sets. There needs to be a salary attached to that. I don't agree with expenses. I think MHK should have expenses. MLCs, there's no reason why they should need an expense account, so I think that should change. But yeah, you should get paid for the job.
Here we are, 3 days to go. Mrs. Corlett, first of all, why should the MHKs, sufficient number of MHKs, put their faith in you?
I think because we're seeing a big change in Legislative Council, a lot of new members, and I think it's important that somebody with good experience of government and legislation is on that council, and I can bring that to the party.
Andy Hardy?
I'm very much a left field choice. I think that when you're self-employed and you work for yourself, you develop different skills, and I think anybody who works for themselves can appreciate that. You're put in different positions and you're presented with things daily that you have to make the best of, and I think that if I was given something from the MHKs, I would look at that role and I would effectively apply all the skills that I've taken over time, and I think I could add to it.
And Rich Furner?
2 reasons. The scrutiny role I will be extremely good at. I know that. I can see myself in that position. I envisage myself doing it, and it will be with
You're not short of confidence?
None whatsoever on that. Also, my skills and experience in financial management and systems management will enable me to help the whole of Tynwald and the whole of the population understand better the island's financial position and how it's forecast to play out in the future. That's what I ideally want to do.